Hello, this is Angela Anderson. Thanks for joining me for this acrylic painting tutorial. In this video, we're going to be painting one of my favorite subjects, butterflies. I'll be showing you how to paint this Monarch butterfly on some lavender, and I'll show you step by step how to do it from start to finish. Let's get started. Colors really quick. I've got carbon black, Dioxazine Purple, Ultramarine Blue, Phthalo green yellow shade, Cadmium yellow light. You could use Cadmium yellow medium too, that's fine. Cadmium orange and Quinacridone Magenta, and then I've got a pretty good amount of titanium white right there. I'm going to spray these. These are heavy body acrylics. The black is a fluid acrylic because we're going to be doing some thin lines. It's just easier to do the line work with a thinner acrylic. So that's why we started out with that one. The brushes that we'll be using, you're going to want some sort of a large flat or Filbert for our background because we're going to be doing this kind of blurry background. And then for our flowers, an angle brush works really well. So if you've got one of those, grab it. And then for our butterfly, you're going to want some sort of a liner or thin round brush for some of that. All right, so I'm going to wet down my brush here. And I'm just going to go ahead and jump right in. This canvas is the 9x12 size from Fredrix. It's a mixed media canvas board, but you could use really any size canvas you wanted for this project. You could crop it down to a square canvas if you prefer. I just like to spray my canvases, whatever you're using. If you're doing this on paper, obviously you don't have to spray paper, but you could, I guess, if you're using watercolors. So spray it down. That kind of opens up the fibers of the canvas, gets them ready to go. All right, so I'm going to start with my greens. I'm not going to worry about any of my purples right now. I'm just going to kind of focus on that background blurry area. So I'm going to get my phthalo green here, and it's kind of sticky. I don't know why this one is kind of sticky. So I'm going to get some water to help keep it fluid. I'm going to get a little bit of yellow. Look how much brighter that yellow makes it. And then to kind of dull it down a little bit, because I don't want it super vibrant quite yet. Maybe in some of the places I will, but I'm going to add a little bit of that ultramarine blue, and that'll just kind of tone it down a little bit. Ultramarine blue has just like a slight purple leaning. It's kind of more like a reddish blue. So the red with the green kind of neutralizes it a little bit, and the red with the yellow here. All right, so that's good. I think that'll work. I'm going to get some water and a little bit more blue and green and kind of create a little darker color. And I'm just going to kind of dab in multiple colors. So I'm just going to do these first. I'm going to get some more of that ultramarine blue and maybe a little bit of that yellow. These two together are going to make kind of an olive green, not as bright as our phthalo green. So I'm just going to continue blending these colors into one another as they're wet. They're going to kind of mix a little bit, and I'm going to use yellows and greens, blues, and all different varieties of values. So some lighter areas and some darker areas to give it a little bit of an illusion of depth. And I know that all of these colors are going to blend well together because they're kind of analogous on the color wheel. So anytime you're kind of wondering how colors are going to react to one another, if you pick colors that are next to each other on the color wheel, you know that they're going to blend really nicely together. When I get to the part where I want to start adding things like pinks and purples, I'm going to be really careful about how much of the green or yellow that I have on my brush, the colors that are opposite on the color wheel, will make grays and browns when mixed to one another. So if you know that ahead of time, you can kind of know to go really heavily on one color. So here when I'm adding Quinacridone Magenta and white, I still have a little bit of that green on my brush, and at first it was kind of a little bit gray, so I added a little bit more of that Quinacridone Magenta to balance out the green and make sure that it wasn't too much of a muddy color. So I'm going to grab some purple and some white here and just create these background flowers. It's blending a little bit with the green. I haven't cleaned out my brush yet, but I'm going to go ahead and clean it out so that I can mix a little bit brighter purple. I'm going to use a little bit of blue with it too to make it kind of a fresh, clean color. And we're just going to dab with the corner of my brush now to create these kind of random flower shapes, and make sure that I'm doing some higher than others in different sizes and shapes. And we're just trying to get these to look like they're kind of blurry, vaguely flower shaped in the background here. And we're going to be able to kind of see them through the foreground flowers, and it'll create depth in our painting. And I'm adding some yellow at the bottom, and I'm going to just continue to kind of create all of these mixtures of colors, making sure that if I want a really bright color, I can add a little bit of white. If I want a deeper color, I can add like even a little bit touch of purple with my green or blue, to create all these different values and varying shades. All right, so now I'm going to switch brushes. We're going to be using the 3/8 inch blender, and we'll be using it to kind of dry brush in some fuzzies. This is the Princeton VelvetTouch blender, 3/8 inch, and then the one that we were using before was their Summit Series, 6100 Summit Series 8 Filbert. So I've got a little bit of water on here, and I'll be using some yellow and some green, a little bit of green and some white to create some really bright yellow, very lime yellow green colors in underneath my lavender here in some of these areas. And just lay on your paint fairly thick, and then you can use the texture of this brush. It's got it's a synthetic hog bristle brush, so it's not going to get soggy in water like a regular hog bristle brush will. It'll keep its firmness. It's very textured, and so you can use it once you lay down your paint to kind of fuzz out your edges, and it works really well for things like clouds and bushes and these kind of bokeh effect backgrounds like what we're doing today. So if you've got too much paint, or you want a little bit more of a transparent layer, then you can just wipe it off, and it'll still kind of scrub on these little transparent dry brushed areas. So we're going to do kind of a little bit of both here and just continue to fill in our background. And I think the main thing is just to make sure that you've got some areas of dark and light in here. So I've got this really nice dark area up in here. So you can do as many layers of this as you want. So, you may decide that you liked your first layer and you don't want to do anything else to it. So, but a lot of times I find that it's good to kind of go back in and kind of refine some of these shapes a little bit after I do my initial lay down of colors. So that's why I was just kind of going quickly, not really worried too much about that first layer, because I knew we were going to come back in here and kind of play with it a little bit and move some stuff around. But sometimes less is more, you know. Sometimes you can overwork a painting. So if you're happy with it, I would say stop. You know, it's just a personal preference, whatever point that you're happy with your painting or how it's looking. I would, you know, stop and move on to the next part. All right, so just adding some little bits of brighter colors here, little white, little yellows, and I think I'm happy with that. So I'm ready to start on my main flowers. So I'm going to go ahead and do my main flowers, I think, with this brush. This is a 6 Angle Bright. It's, since this is kind of a long canvas here, I think it'll work well for it. All right, so I'm going to use the purple, and I'm going to add some white to it. There we go. How pretty that is. And then I want to have blue and magenta as my kind of accents. So it'll give my purple a little bit more richer detail to have the blue and the magenta in there as well. Is just, except for, you know, instead of just the purple and white. All right, so get some water. Some water on my brush and press that flat so that I've got a nice line on it. You want to get a straight line on your brush. And I'm just going to use it to draw in my stems for my flowers. So I want one here. And if you find that difficult, you can turn your canvas so that you've got an easier, it's a lot easier to draw it when it's kind of on its side. So I'm going to do one here and one here. And then this is the one that's going to have our butterfly on it. So I want him kind of on my third. So I want him here. So I want to put my stem like right in here. So he's got a place. I'm going to just kind of make a mark there so I know where to start him. So, because I want him to end up like right in the third on this side. So I'm going to do that one right there. And that'll have my butterfly right in here. And then we got another one kind of angling out this way. And a smaller one back there. Crisscrossing. There, one here. Whoops. Now see, it broke up there because I didn't have my brush flat. Let's just press that brush flat. Good smooth line. Okay, I think that'll work. I might do one more in here, just low right here. So we have 3 large tall ones and everything else is kind of staggered in here in different heights. Right, then I'm going to use the tip of my brush. I'm going to turn it upside down and I'm just going to dab. See how it makes those little petals for me? So I'm just going to dab on either side. This angle brush makes it super easy to do these kind of flowers. And I'm kind of dabbing and pulling towards the stem. So as I'm going out this way, I'm kind of turning my brush so that the tip of it is pointing out this way, and then this side I'm turning it so they're pointing this way. And so I'm going back and forth. And then some of the ones in the middle are just going to be little dots right on the middle area, because those ones are facing us straight on. The ones on the sides are kind of like this, the ones on this side that way, and then the ones in the middle are kind of coming straight at us. So we're just seeing this like little tip of them. We're going to do plenty other details to these, so I don't want to do too much yet. I'm just kind of laying in some colors to start with. So I'm going to quickly kind of go along the stems on either side and kind of skip around, leave some spaces in between. They have these like little gaps. They have a little section here and gap, and a little section there and a gap. So go ahead and do them all the way down off the canvas. And then there's some back in here that are a little bit lighter, so I'm going to get some of my white and just do these ones that are back here a little bit lighter. This one's covering up most of it, but you can see a little bit of him back there. Let's go ahead and do this one that's next to him, kind of lighter too. I'm going to bring him up so that he's not the same level as this one. This one's not in my photograph, so I'm just making him up. So just continue to fill in your purple flowers, and using that tip of the brush makes it really easy. I'm just dabbing it and trying to keep my brush strokes random so that it looks more natural, leaving lots of space in between the blossoms. We're going to be doing a couple more layers on these, so this doesn't have to be perfect right here. We're just kind of trying to get some color down and get our shapes established on our flowers, and kind of vary up the values a little bit. So do some a little bit darker and some a little bit lighter, and that'll kind of help with the realism too, because the darker ones will look a little bit closer to us and the lighter ones will kind of fade farther into the background. And then once you've got that done, you can add a little bit of white and maybe a little bit of blue and go in and add your highlights. And those highlights are going to be setting right up on top of your darker areas where the light's catching them. And then that'll make the darker areas look like they're in shadow. Just be sure that you're leaving plenty of the background colors showing and not covering them all up with your highlights. You want to use your highlights very selectively so that they really stand out. You can also choose like one side or the other to focus on like a light source. In this photograph, our light is coming from directly overhead just about, so we're not seeing like a really heavy shadow or highlight on one side or the other of these flowers, but you could totally do that if you wanted to make it seem a little bit more directional with our light source. Then once you get your highlights in there, you can go back in with some really deep purple and add it right along the stem in some places, and that will add even more drama to our flowers and more depth. And just continue to fill in all of these, and again, keeping your brush strokes random. Some of these blossoms are coming out towards the outside and they're kind of opening up. They have a little bit of a flower blossom that comes out towards the sides of the flowers, so you can add some of those, and also add some dots into the kind of middle range there in the background so that it kind of blends between that very far background and these closer flowers. Then we're going to start to add some more red violet into some warmer tones into our lavender. So we're going to use the Quinacridone Magenta and mix it in to that light violet color that we were using before, that light lavender color, and then create some darker tones with the purple and magenta, maybe a little bit of blue, and tap those in. And you could do your flowers with this color too. I prefer kind of a more blue color in my lavender, so that's why I kind of went with a bluer color, and I also thought it would be pretty with the orange of the butterfly. But you could do a warmer reddish lavender, more of a red violet color, using that Quinacridone Magenta and your purple, and do your flowers in that color tone too. So let's work on our butterfly now. So to start with, I'm going to go ahead and just paint him in white, and that will give me a good base for where I want to place him. So he's going to be right in here. Let me go ahead and draw it really quickly. Use my white charcoal pencil here. So I want him to be right in here. This will be his head, body. Body's kind of a diamond shape almost. Legs up front. The legs you kind of meet up with that. I'm going to move him over just a little bit. I want his legs to reach out and kind of just be touching right there. So rounded body. And then the head's forward, tilted forward. All right, so right below the head, there's just like that little shoulder bit, and then it angles out. I'm going to make them quite large, fill in this whole area right in here. So right up under the body here, I'll make his body a little bit bigger. Legs going this way. Right there. And then right where this body kind of curves in, right here, this is the wing. So it curves out like that. And then this wing comes out. I'm going to bring it out a little bit farther. Bring it in. There's a little bit of a... right there. Okay, so there's our basic shape. I think that'll work. So using the white will just give me a nice clean background to work with, and my oranges will be a much more bright, vivid colors that we want for our butterfly. Then once I get this background filled in with the white, we will fill in the body and the outside of the wings with some black, and then dry the whole thing before we start adding our color. I'm going to use the 3/8 inch angle for this one, and we're going to get some cadmium orange and some cadmium yellow light. Mix those together and fill in our butterfly bottom wing with this two colors, kind of a golden orangey yellow. And having that white underneath just gives us a really vivid backdrop. If we tried to go straight over the purple and green in the background, it would not be this bright. In the back wings, I'm adding just a little bit of magenta to make those a little bit of a deeper orange color. Just fill that in totally, and then we'll have to let it dry again before we start adding our details. All right, so once your background is dry, you can grab a number 1 round or a liner brush and get some black. Make sure it's nice and fluid, and you're going to want to paint in all of the details of our wings. If you want to, you can use a pencil to draw in your details first, or you can even transfer on your design with transfer paper. So whatever you choose to do, we're going to use that liner brush and just very carefully paint in all of the little wing, the black wing designs on our butterfly. I think doing line work like this can be very relaxing and meditative. Just take your time with this. You could also use a pen if you don't like using a liner brush. Make sure that you use a waterproof pen if you're going to do it with a pen. Like a Faber-Castell or a Sakura Pigma, one of those brands will work really well for this. And just continue to fill in all of these lines. If you're using a liner brush, I find that there's a few key things to remember. So first is to use a thin paint. If your paint is too thick, those thin fibers of your liner brush or round brush that you're using just won't be able to push that paint around. And so you'll find that the paint's not coming off of your brush. That thick paint is just going to stick to your brush, and then you're going to end up pressing down harder to try to get the paint to come off, and then you'll end up with a really thick line. So make sure that you've got a nice thin paint. Add water if you need to, and that will help that paint just flow right off your brush. You won't have to hardly press down at all to get it to create your lines. And then also hold your brush just like you would a pen or a pencil. So hold it right up by the silver part and make sure that you've got it choked up on that ferrule, just so that the very tip of the brush is the only thing touching the canvas. Make sure that you're keeping your hand nice and relaxed as well. Having a loose grip on your brush will give you smoother and finer lines as well. And then the last thing is just to make sure that you're keeping your brush upright. So you want to keep your brush perpendicular to the canvas at all times so that you can really control where that paint is going. If you've got too much of an angle and you're holding your brush too much to the side, you won't be able to turn your brush at all. You won't get curved lines or anything like that. So make sure that you're kind of holding it upright. You can see that my wrist is kind of bent here, and I'm resting my palm on the canvas to give it a little bit of stability. So once you get all of your black done, then you can start adding your little details with the white. And again, I'm just using the liner brush here, or actually my #1 round, and adding little dots. And if you load up your brush fairly thickly with paint, then you can just barely touch down and it'll cover pretty well over the top of that black. I'm also using it to add a little bit of yellow in some places on my wings where I needed a little bit better coverage. So when my children were little, we actually had a really fun experience with butterflies. We had some caterpillars that showed up on our parsley plants in our garden, and we brought them inside. It turned out to be swallowtail caterpillars, and they're pretty common here in Arkansas. And so we gave them lots of parsley to eat and some sticks and things in a little aquarium, and they were happy as could be. They ate it all up, and then they kind of curled up on the branches, and they looked like they were dead. They turned black and they were kind of gnarly looking, and I wasn't really sure what was happening. I was hoping that they were actual chrysalises and that they hadn't died. But after a little bit, we came out one morning and they had all emerged as butterflies, and it was so much fun. You have to kind of let their wings dry out a little bit. They kind of expand. They come out kind of all wrinkly, and then it takes them a few hours for the wings to fully expand out. So you kind of have to just leave them alone for a little while, and while that happens, and we watched them. And once they started getting more active and they were flapping their wings around, we let them come out, and they crawled all over my boys. We took lots of pictures. It was just such a magical experience. We had so much fun, and it just was fun to be part of this miraculous metamorphosis. I don't know. I don't know how to explain it, but it was just like we were part of something really special, you know. We were like proud butterfly parents. It was really fun. And we let the butterflies go in our yard and watch them fly away. Last thing we need to do on our painting here is just to add a little bit of yellow highlights to the centers of our panes, and I'm just dry brushing a little bit with my #4 round, and then adding just a little bit of the bright orange to my flowers. There's just little tiny bits of orange and a few more highlights with my lighter highlight colors to finish off my flowers, and we are done. Hope you've enjoyed this painting. I've really enjoyed sharing it with you and sharing my stories about butterflies, and I hope you check out my other videos, and check out my main video is going to be about Georgia O'Keeffe. We're going to be painting a large flower, one of my favorite things to do, and so I hope you join me for that. Thanks for watching. Bye.